Okay. I think we're on the top of, I hope we're on the top of Ayin. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so we're going to cite a Mishnah. We had a Mishnah in government base spoke about what's the timetable for annulling vows. Do you have only until Hafaras Nadarim? That means when the husband is annulling the vow of his wife or the father of his daughter. So Hafaras Nadarim has to be done that day. Ataras Nadarim, that's when you have a chacham who's going to completely nullify somebody's vow. So that can be done anytime. That can be done a week after a week, a month, a year, or 10 years after the vow was taken. That's subject to different rules. So one is called hafara. That's what we refer to in terms of the husband's annulment of his wife's vow, and the other is called hatara. That's the nullification. That's what we generally do nowadays. That's the nullification of a vow by a bezdin. Technically, you could have a chacham mumcha do it, but we don't have anybody quite in that level. We assume nowadays, according to the way we pass in the Shulchan Aruch. So we always have a bezdin of 3 to do a nullification of vows. So we're going to speak about can the annulment of vows by a husband be done on Shabbos? Can the nullification of vows be done on Shabbos? It's not us, like the Mishnah that says the hafara, the annulment of vows can be done on Shabbos. Mishalin and Nidarim shein tzarach for Shabbos. The nullification of vows, which is here referred to as mishalin, that can be done on Shabbos, provided that there's some sort of a Shabbos need. Person had taken a vow not to drink wine, not to eat challah, not to eat kugel. So there's a need for that vow to be nullified in Shabbos. It could be nullified in Shabbos. But the annulment of vows can be done on Shabbos. It doesn't say whether that requires tzarach Shabbos or not. So he asked in the yeshiva, Neifirim Nedarim b'Shabbos tzarach Shabbos. So when we say that the annulment of vows by husband can be done on Shabbos, does that mean it has to be the tzarach Shabbos for Shabbos need also? The wife took a vow that she's not going to eat kugel. But maybe even if it's not the tzarach, if she took a vow that she's not going to drive anymore, so it has nothing to do with Shabbos. So Tashma, the Tani Rav Zuti, today Rav Papi, not such familiar names. The Tani Rav Zuti, today Rav Papi, Ein Mefir Nedarim El Tzarach Shabbos. So he's of the opinion. He has some tradition that even the annulment of vows has to be for Shabbos Mitzvah. Rav Ashi has in Lotanan Hachu. So Rav Ashi said, but our Mishnah does not indicate that because our Mishnah speaks about Leil Shabbos. And it says, Nadrim Chashecha, Meper La Ada She Lo Techshach. That if, let's say, it wasn't Leil Shabbos, but it was Shabbos afternoon, 2 minutes before the end of Shabbos, so then the husband has to nullify the vow before it is nightfall, because otherwise they're going to lose the opportunity, since the annulment of vows has to take place on the same day that the vow is made. That's what the Mishnah said. The Yamis, but if you say that it can only be annulled if there's a tzorach, the tzorach Shabbos in, shlolik tzorach Shabbos low, my area chashecha, what difference does it make if it becomes dark? If she took the vow 2 minutes before Shabbos was over, that even during those 2 minutes, he shouldn't be allowed to annul the vow, because there's nothing that's going to be such an urgent, pressing need during the last 2 minutes of Shabbos. By the time he annuls the vow, it's not going to be Shabbos anymore. And so we say, you're right. According to our Mishnah, that allows for the annulment of a vow at the last minute of Shabbos, it must be pertaining even to a vow. It's not for a Shabbos need, but that's because the Tana of our Mishnah is of the opinion that an annulment of vow has to take place the very same day that the vow is made. So if it's made 2 minutes before the end of the day, you only have those 2 minutes. So then you would be allowed, the husband would be allowed to annul the vow on Shabbos, even if the vow did not pertain to Shabbos. The Shalol Tzarach Tanaihi, but it's a machlokas Tanaim about when it is that a vow needs to be annulled by the husband. If you hold that the husband has a 24-hour period, so then we can say, so there isn't such an urgency for it to be annulled on Shabbos unless there's a Shabbos need. So according to the Tana, who would be of the opinion that the husband has 24 hours, no matter what, to annul the vow, then he would only annul it on Shabbos if there was a Shabbos need. As far as the Nedarim Kol Hayom is the opinion of the Tana Kama, And that's the opinion of our Tana. Thank you. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, however, hold Amud that a nomen of vow always has a 24-hour window. So they hold may ace the ace. So therefore, it's a very simple equation. Lamata Amar Kol Hayom in its Philo, the opinion who says that you only have that day to annul the vow and not when it becomes nightfall. So then there's an urgency to annul the vow before the end of Shabbos because the husband won't have the ability to annul it after Shabbos. So then it could be annulled for Shabbos, even if the vow pertains to driving a car, Mayfair, he can annul the vow. Lamanda Amr, according to the other Tana opinion, that the Zug that says it's Me'es Li'es, the husband has a 24-hour period, so then there's no urgency to annul it on Shabbos. He can wait till after Shabbos. The Tzorach Shabbos in, Shalol Tzorach Shabbos lo. Nishalan l'nedarim shehin l'tzorach Shabbos. So what did we say? We said in the Mishnah that we quoted earlier, the Mishnah from Masechah Shabbos, that as far as Hatara is concerned, as far as the nullification of vows is concerned, that can take place on Shabbos as long as there's some Shabbos need. The wife had taken a vow that she's not, or a person, doesn't have to be a wife. Some person had taken a vow, a man had taken a vow. He's not going to eat kugel, so he can go to a bezdin on, go to a chacham, to whomever it's going to be. We'll find out on Shabbos to do a nullification of the vow, so he can eat kugel. But what if he could have gone to the bezdin on Friday afternoon? Say the CRC was open for business. He could have showed up, said, I want to nullify my vow. So he bailahu yeshalo hayalahem pnai. So is this only when he didn't have a chance to have the vow nullified before Shabbos? So or even he did have a chance to nullify the vow on Erev Shabbos, but he just decided I'm just going to wait till Shabbos. So would it be permissible under those circumstances? So Tashma, we have the following learning. These the Kiku Le Rabbanan the Rav Zutra, the Rav Zeira, that the Chachamim helped out the son of Rav Zutra, the Rav Zeira, even in those Nadarim where, as long as there was a Tzorach Shabbos, they're willing to nullify the vows on Shabbos, even though he had the opportunity to nullify them Erev Shabbos. This was like, he would come to them on Shabbos, say, now I have more time, Shabbos, there's leisure, so I have more time to nullify my vow. Can you do it for me now so I can eat my kugel? So Sabar of Yosef Lememar, Nishalan Nidarim b'Shabbos Yachid Mumche in Shlosha Yotos Lo. So Yosef said, you know what? It may be when we allow for nullification of vows on Shabbos, it has to be done in a less formalized fashion, because then it looks like a din, which you're not supposed to do on Shabbos. Bezdin is not supposed to convene for a din Torah on Shabbos. So if you had a Yachid Mumche, you had a super duper crackerjack Dayan who was a Yachid Mumche who would be allowed to nullify vows all by himself. We don't have that nowadays, we say. That would be what's permitted on Shabbos for the nullification of vows for Ataras Nedarim. But if you have a whole fully convened Bezdin, even though they're Hayotos, that's why none of them could do it themselves. You have a full bezdin of 3 men, so then mishum the mexi the miskazi, then you can't do it. Lo mishum the miskazi kedina, because it looks like they're convening a din Torah on Shabbos, which is something that we don't allow. It's too much of an shemilsa. It's going to lead to writing. Whatever the reasons, we don't allow din on Shabbos. So Amalei Abaye, no, it doesn't matter if you have 3 men who are convened for the nullification of vows. Everybody knows that it's not a real din. In what way do we know it's not a real din? It's not human the spirulon, since we hold the filam umud, that the nullification of vows can be done even standing up, even by relatives. It can even be done by relatives. Rabban Soloveitchik was of the opinion that it means that one of the dayanim can be related to the person who's nullifying the vow, but you can't have 2 dayanim related to each other, because then there's a defect in the chefza of the bezdin. Reb Schechter likes to quote that. It'd be the same thing about Taras Nedarim on Erev Rosh Hashanah. According to Rabban Soloveitchik, you shouldn't have 2 relatives together. You can have the person who's nullifying the vow can be a relative of one of the members of the bezdin. You shouldn't have 2 members of the bezdin who are relatives to each other, according to Rabban Soloveitchik. Not everyone agrees, but that's his shita. And even during the nighttime, lo mischazi, since it can even be nullification of vows can even take place at night. I get that shayla sometimes. So therefore, lo mischazi kedina. So therefore, everyone knows that it's not a real din Torah, so it would be okay even if you had 3 members of the bezdin nullifying the vow on Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Halacha mifina darim b'layla. The halacha is that we do nullify vows at night. So that's nice. Thanks for nothing. We don't need Rav to teach me that statement. Hamasnisani. The Mishnah tells me that. What do I need Rav to tell me that? It says in our Mishnah, Nadra v'leili Shabbos. If she took the vow right on Friday night, so then the husband has up until the end of Shabbos to nullify the vow. Elaima halacha nishalim b'layla. Rather, the chiddush of Rav is that not only the annulment of vows by a husband can take place at night, but even the nullification of vows by a chacham or a bezdin can take place at night as well. So Amalei Rabbi Abba, even though there's more of a window to nullify vows, you only have a period of that day. So Amalei Rabbi Abba Rafuna. So Rabbi Abba said Rafuna is the one who quoted Rav as saying this, and then Rabbi Abba heard it from Rafuna. That's why Rabbi Abba eventually recorded it in the name of Rafuna. But when Rabbi Abba first heard it from Rafuna, so Rabbi Abba asked Rafuna, said, "Amar Rav Hachachi, did Rav really say that?" So Amalei Ishtik. He said, "Well, I said it. I said this notion of that it seems like a vow could be nullified at night. The Rav was quiet, so I took that as a shtika kehodah. So Amalei, well, how do we know that he was agreeing? Ishtika ka'amis, oshasi ka'amis. Was he saying the ishtik in the sense that maybe he was like this, that he was that he held that he held that way, or maybe he was just drinking. He was distracted at that moment. It's Harashi learns. Maybe he was just distracted at that moment in time. He was shasi. He was drinking. So that's why he didn't respond. He didn't respond to you. But maybe not necessarily that he agreed to you. The Ran has a different interpretation of the words. He says ishtik is did he say it in a way that he was saying like shkoyach, like ashkoyach. Shkoyach could be, we say shkoyach as sort of a shortened version of a yasha kochacha. So the Ran has a different possibility. Shkoyach is like ashkoyach. That that's so great. I want to give you a drink. What word was it that he just wanted that he was quiet because he wanted you to stop talking in such a silly fashion. So it's not necessarily his shtika is not necessarily indicative of agreement. Okay. So which is it? So we have according to the girsa that we have, the following statement gives us an answer. So Amar Ravika bar Avin Izdakika Alei Rabba Larabba, that if we want to really know Rab's opinion as to whether you could do a nullification of vows at night, he did it himself. He did it Larabba. He did it or another girsa is Rav Hananel Bekituna de Beirav in a certain area, a garden area of Rav. He took care, or according to the Ran, it was the cheder of the Beis Medrash. It was in the lobby area of the Beis Medrash, the hallway. Omeid, he nullified the vow standing up, and he was a Yachid Mumche, so he didn't need necessarily a Bezdin of three. Yechidi, so he did it by himself. Ubalayla, and he did it at night. So we see that Rav certainly, by his example, held that it must have been a shkayach or ashkiyan, I'm going to give you a drink, or shtika kehodah, whichever way. He certainly held himself that it was permissible to nullify vows in the nighttime. So Amar Rabba, or we have here in the side, now it should be Rabba. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Nachman, halacha. Here's the halacha. Nishala nidarim, and that when we do a nullification of vows, it could be done standing up. Omed yechidi, it could be done by a yachid mumche over Laila, and it could be done at night. And not only that, it could be done on Shabbos, Uva Shabbos, and we paskin that it could even be something that it has to have a tzorach Shabbos. We said Uva Krobim, it can be done by relatives, meaning at least one relative, one person on the Bezdin can be a relative of the person nullifying the vow, or maybe you can have multiple relatives from different sides who aren't related to each other. And as we stated earlier, even if there was the opportunity for the petitioner to have nullified the vow before Shabbos, he could still do it on Shabbos. Omed, all the kulas. So Omed, we state, well, the only thing that's not a kula is that it has to, if it's a nullification of vow, it has to be the tzarach Shabbos. Right. Omed, so we say standing up, What do you mean standing up? I don't nullify vows to standing. I sit down, but I'm not the one who has to stand. The one nullifying the vow stands. I get to sit and relax. So what do you mean standing up? The Hatanya, we have a brisa that says Rabban Gamliel wouldn't do it standing up. Yovad Rabban Gamliel min hachamor. He was on a donkey. He got down from his donkey. And and he girded himself with his talis, with all due seriousness. Yoshev, and he sat down. Nidro, and he nullified someone's vow. So we say, well, it depends whether you hold that you can nullify a vow is simply based on ascertaining that the petitioner regrets having made the vow in the first place. Rabban Gamliel Savar, he held ain poskin b'charata. So you have to change the gears over here. Gamliel held that you can't do it just by having the ascertaining the person regrets it. You have to find a Pesach. What does a Pesach mean? The Pesach means, had you known that such and such would happen, that you took a vow against somebody, but had you known that he didn't do the bad thing that you thought he did to you, then would you have taken the vow in the first place? Had you known that your favorite team would be in the Super Bowl, would you have taken the vow not to watch the Super Bowl? The things happen that would have changed your mindset. So that requires a little bit more thought and concentration. So you have to sit down for that. So a nether has to be uprooted from the very start in terms of reevaluating what the person's mindset should have been had he known things that were different afterwards that he didn't know at the time. And that requires a much more deliberation. So that's why Rabban Gamliel sat down. Rav Nachman, on the other hand, was of the opinion of Nachman, who said that it could be done standing up. He's of the opinion that poschin b'charata, change the gears here too. Poschin b'charata, that you don't need to figure out, or had you known this and that, would you have taken in the first place? Just do you regret that you took it, that you took the vow? When you took the vow, you were in a very passionate mood. Do you regret that you were so passionate at the time that you regret that you took it in the first place? So then that doesn't require as much deliberation. It's just the ascertainment that the person regrets that they did this, not because had I known this, I wouldn't have taken it in the first place. Maybe I would have, but I just regret that I was in such a bad mood, or that I was in such a passionate mood, whatever the case was, or that I was in such an idealistic mood. So therefore it can be done even standing up. What we do nowadays with the Shulchan Aruch Paskins is that we do a Pesach Ayidei Charat, that we say, oh, do you regret taking the vow? Had you known that today you would feel that you regretted taking the vow, would you have taken it in the first place? The reason we do that is because a Pesach can work even if it wasn't true at the time. Like even if now the person regrets it, but maybe they didn't regret for the first 10 days that they took the vow. They're happy the first 10 days that they took the vow. So then regret alone wouldn't work. But if we do a Pesach Hayedei Chalata, we say, had you known now that you would regret it, would you have taken it in the first place? So that would work, even if maybe it wouldn't be true that the person regrets it from the outset. So that's the way that we nullify vows nowadays. A Pesach Hayedei Chalata. So Amle Rabba Rav Nachman. So Rabba said to Rav Nachman, Chazimar Haim Rabbanan the Asam Mima'arva. And so he said to Rav Nachman that there's a fellow who came from Eretz Yisrael, and he brings the following report. His report is Bama is the Kikul de Rabbanan Levreda Rafuna Barabin, that the Chachamim were willing to nullify a vow. Rafuna Barabin, Visharale Nidre, and the way in which they nullified the vow was that they told him that you did a terrible sin. In other words, that's the way that they got him to regret that he did the vow in the first place. That you should ask for mercy for yourself because of the fact that you sinned. That the Tani Ravdimi Achud Rav Safra that even if you take a vow and you keep the vow, you're considered to be a sinner. This is how they showed him that he should have regret that he took the vow in the first place. So Amar Rav Zvid, Mike, what's the pasuk to teach me that? Because the pasuk says in Devarim, when you stop taking vows, so there won't be a sin. Halocha dalta ikachet. It sounds like if you keep on taking vows, that you're going to be sinning. So it seems like taking vows, even if you're going to keep the vow, is a sinful thing to do. So this is how they got him to regret that he took a vow in the first place. Okay. So Tanya, Haomer, the Brisa says, Haomer liishto konadarim shetaduri, yevshe shetaduri, or ein zeneder, alo marklum. A person who wants to do hafara, he wants to do an annulment of his wife's vows, so it requires an actual lashon hafara. These are not the lashon hafara. He has to say mufalach. If he just says, "Oh, I don't want you to take vows in the future," or or this is not a neder. No, he has to say mufalach. If he didn't say a lashon of that sort, so lo maklum, and so then that doesn't count. Yafe asisa, but if it's a question of kiyum, a question of accepting the vow, of upholding the vow, which is called kiyum, so that doesn't have the same margin of specificity, the same level of specificity that's required. If he just says, "Oh, what you did was a good thing that you took such a vow," but there's nobody like you. You're so wonderful that you took such a vow. If you wouldn't have taken the vow, I would have imposed that vow upon you. It was such a great vow, such a gevaldik vow. So then dvarav kayamin. So then that's going to be perfectly fine, because the kiyum. All of these are a clear lashon of kiyum, of upholding the vow that she made. So hafara requires more specificity, and hakama, a general statement, is going to be good enough. Okay. Lo yamar adam lishto b'Shabbos mufa lichi bata lichi kederek she'omer la b'chol. However, even though the lashon of mufa lach would be a perfectly good lashon in order to nullify a vow, or so to bata lichi would be a good enough lashon to nullify a vow, you should use a different lashon during Shabbos than you would use on during a weekday. Why is that? Because Shabbos you should do things differently. That lo yeh divorcha Shabbos ki divorcha kechol the davar. So everything should be changed around a little bit. Ela omer la, what you would be allowed to do in order to nullify the vow is that let's say she took a vow that she was not going to eat the kugel. So you can say, take the kugel and eat it. Taliva achli, she took a vow that she's not going to drink the bourbon. So you say, Taliva shasi, go ahead, you can drink it. The neder batul me'elav, and then the neder becomes batul by itself because he is specifying to do that exact thing that she said that she would not do. However, since he didn't say mufalach, and we said the mufalach is going to be important, so there has to be some sort of a kavanah that he has in his heart, that he's actually being mevatel, he's actually as if he's articulating the words mufalach in his heart. That would be necessary.
I said it at one time, but tomorrow he will agree with it.
No, once he nullifies the vow, so
drink it. He's not telling you, it's not saying he offered it. I'm not going to drink bourbon. Drink bourbon. So we're saying, well, it shows that he doesn't want.
Yeah, right. It shows that he's actually nullifying the vow. If she took the vow, she can't do it. And he says, you go do it. So that means that he has nullified the vow. Otherwise, he wouldn't be telling her to do it. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan, but there has to be some sort of a nullification that accompanies this in his heart. So Shivata Belibo. Tanya Beishamai Omen Beishabes Mabata Belibo. Beishamai says he can only get away of doing a bittul in his heart on Shabbos before Motzi Bisfasa. But if it's a weekday, then he has to actually articulate it with his mouth. Beisila says no, nothing doing this trick, that he's just doing it inside of his heart, and tells her, you go and you eat or you drink that which you said that you're taking a vow not to. That's good enough both on Shabbos and during the week. And it's not necessary to articulate it with your mouth. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chacham she'amar b'lashon Baal. If a Chacham said he said mufalach, the way that a husband annuls a vow, he nullifies the vow by saying mufalach. Baal she'amar b'lashon Chacham, and a Baal who says mutalach to his wife instead of saying mufalach, lo amar klum, then it doesn't work because a husband can only do annulment. Annulment we know works mikan l'abah. A Chacham does hatara. he does nullification, which is okeres neder meikaro. It's as if it never happened in the first place. So they function differently and they're different formulations. The Tanya, because it says in the parsha of vows at the beginning of Parshas Matos, Zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem, Zeh hadavar, and that's talking about how a chacham, how a husband annuls his wife's vow, and we also learn from that parsha how a chacham should nullify. This is lo yachel dvaro, means achevim mechilin es dvaro, that other people can do hatara. So we learn both of these different techniques from the parsha. So that teaches me hachacham matir, that a chacham can do hatara, that he could say mutalach, vein baal matir, but a baal does not say mutalach. He has to do hafara, like the lashon of the Torah with respect to a baal. Shiyachol, because I might have thought uma chacham she'ein meipir matir, a chacham who doesn't have the ability to do hafara, he could do a Torah. So baal shemeipir, a baal who can even do a hafara. So I would have thought that he can certainly do hatara, right? Eno din shematir tamalomar. So that's why the Torah specifies no. It has to be exactly how it is spelled out in the Torah. That only chacham right? Zeh adavar. Meaning chacham is matir, ain't ba matir, and we'll just finish Tanyidach. The other brayso says Zeh hadavar teaches me the opposite direction as well. That baal meipir, ain't chacham meipir. Only a husband can annul, and a chacham bezdin cannot annul. They can only say mutalach, right? Shiyachol ma baal she'ein matir meipir. A baal who doesn't have the ability to be matir can to nullify. He can annul. Chacham shematir, a chacham that is a matir, he does nullify. Eno din shemeipir, he can certainly then annul, since he has the ability even to be matir. So tamaloma no zeh davar, only baal meipir, ke'ein chacham meipir. Only a husband can use the lashon of annulment and not a chacham. We'll stop here.
Does the base thing get a lot of